Evening all, how are we all doing? Are we all ready for some exciting game dev action? I'm not going to be doing any tutorial stuff tonight because that was supremely dull on the last stream. So we'll work on a prop system tonight. But I do have something cool to show you actually, so let me fire up the engine a sec. We always get distracted. Thank you, Firstus. Yeah, I feel really, really sleepy today for some reason. Not quite sure why. Oh yeah, there's no music. Why is there no music? There we go. Now there should be music. Hopefully that's a decent volume. Right, let's go to Mini-Me. Ignore all the red. I'll explain that in a minute. So let's just go to a random object. That'll do. Evening, Archer. Yes, Anasi, they were actually already spawning. It's just they're very rare. It's probably not a good example. Yeah, Claire's telling me all about your epic bug finding session. And it was both great and frustrating at the same time, because great because there weren't any game breaking bugs, and also frustrating because there were quite a few niggly little bugs that I need to fix.
Initiating long-range survey.
Let me just get an idea for what planets we've got here a sec. Yeah, when my hair is short, it has this habit of just standing up. I've given up with it these days.
Long-range survey complete.
Oh, so I am. Thank you, CSI. I think I'm also too tiny. There we go. Does this all have a decent... Yeah, this one has a decent polar cap. So let's fly over there a minute. So we had an issue with the nanite tessellation on carpets, where if the camera collided quite close with the tessellation, then it would subdivide infinitely, and that subdivision right up close to the camera was causing crashes and all sorts of things. So in an effort to fix that, it'll also open the door for us to be able to do some other exciting stuff, such as applying nanite tessellation to planetary objects. So as I fly over this gas giant, you should see actual 3D clouds. Now obviously this isn't the final form of what this is going to be. Eventually these will be proper volumetric clouds, but as a stopgap measure, at least it's not a flat texture. There is still a crash issue with this, however. So if we get too close to the tessellation, which is basically the upper cloud deck, then it will freeze. If you just plow through it, it's fine, but if you kind of fly into it horizontally, it will lock up the engine. So just something to bear in mind there. But yeah, so this isn't actually true volumetric clouds or anything. This is just animated nanite tessellation. But as I say, it's an improvement over a flat texture, so better than nothing. Let's just whiz away from that a minute. It works best in areas of high contrast, so that the polar regions of gas giants tend to be quite contrasty, so you have a lot of movement to the clouds there. Let's see if I can find another bit. Oh, too fast. I haven't done Earth specifically yet, although Earth-likes will have tessellation. Trying to find a storm. It's almost a storm. The storms are quite cool because the eye of the storm goes inward, as you'd expect it to, which is kind of cool. There's not really a lot of surface detail on this particular gas giant, so you can't see it very well. Yeah, I went ahead and picked one with not a lot going on. If we look at something like... one of these guys here. Where is it? Oh, it's over there. Of course I'm on the dark side. No, the bug where the light shines through the planets is an issue with the engine itself. So obviously we're rendering things on a 1-to-1 scale, and the shadow caster won't cast that far. So that's a bigger issue that needs fixing. So we're going to have to find a different solution to that. It might have to be the case that we turn the star off when you're fully obscured by a planet. It's not an ideal solution, but it might be the only interim solution we have, other than just ignoring the issue. Yeah, as you can see, the surface is 3D. Again, this is very basic 3D. I mean, we're making no pretense that this is awesome, but it's just a little bit of surface detail, which again is, at best better than a 2D surface. Just having a little bit of 3D there just Just makes it just a little bit nicer. Yeah, 7 and 9 on the numpad, unless you mean roll. So on the numpad, so you've got 5 and 6 will yaw left and right, 8 and 5 pitch up and down, and then 7 and 9 to roll. Obviously, eventually that will be hooked up to controllers and all sorts of stuff. So of course the main ship is not designed to land anyway. I mean, you can't land. You've got a honking great ring around it. So the closest that you'll get to planets with this particular ship is just kind of skirting above the atmosphere. So it won't allow you to get much closer than this. So the planetary surfaces only need to hold up to scrutiny from orbital distances. Obviously, once you get to the surface, then we'll be rendering the surfaces properly. Yep, we'll have full HOTAS support. Yes, ProPuke, they are all perfectly spherical at the moment. Although they don't need to be. We can squish them down, make them egg-shaped if we need to. So, based on stretching, we can. Well, you can work that out. That there are equations where you can work out elongation. No. So obviously right now we don't have collisions implemented at all, so you can just like plow into mountain ranges and go bloop through them like that. And if you do it at a reasonably harsh angle, it won't crash. If you try and skim the surface horizontally, then the nanite tessellation does have a bit of a fit and it will lock up and crash sometimes. You get like GPU crashes. It's not too bad if you're just skimming across the top, but yeah, try not to. There we go. Look. See, it locks up. If you let it lock up like that for too long, it will crash the GPU. But as I say, if you plow into it, then generally it's fine. Oh, is it gonna crash? And there we go. Case in point. Yeah, so it's flaky if you get too close to it, so definitely a from orbit thing. Yes, Ian, that's on my to-do list to fix. Yeah, so when it's all actually done properly and it has collisions, there will be a sphere around each planetary body which the ship physically cannot get closer than. So the ship will bounce off of that sphere, and in order to get to the actual planetary surface, you'll need to take a shuttle down. So that sphere will be what triggers the shuttle transition to transition you to the surface environment. The surface environments will be rendered completely separately from what you see in space. Yeah, so the closest we intend the main ship to get to the planetary surface is literally just skimming the upper atmosphere, which you'll do in gas giants anyway for refueling. Very true, Delta, yeah. Would travelling take in real life days? Yes, so the ship moves at 300 light years per hour. So, in terms of real life speed, it will take 2 weeks to travel from one side of the galaxy to the other. Star to star, you're looking more like around about a minute between stars. Yeah, 5.5 is working. I was experimenting with 5.5 yesterday, and for some reason planetary rings don't work in 5.5, so I need to delve into the shader and figure out what's happening with that. Right, now let me go find our props level. So you'll notice that all the props now have some error messages on them, and that's because in order to fix the issue where we have things like all these crates and things that fall down when the level starts, obviously when we split all the levels up and increase the gap between each deck, all these props are in the wrong location, and the previous system I was using to record the location of these required a bit of a hack to update some data tables, and ultimately it was a bit of a bodge that I was never really very happy with. So in order to fix that and update the prop locations, I've put a new system together where we can generate seeds and IDs on a per prop basis, and then have the prop look for its own ID in the save file, and if that ID exists, then it can update its location to wherever the save file says it should be, and it can do that without duplicating itself, because the problem we would have had previously is we can duplicate items because it spawns an item in its default location, but if you've moved it, then there'll be a second version which is spawned in the new location, so then you get a duplicated item, but this avoids that from happening completely. So if we just grab our master a minute. No, not the lighting master, we didn't want that. We want prop master. Yeah. Yeah, definitely, Sarah. We're doing all of it iteratively, so the idea is that we'll make the base system, see how well it performs, work out what the best practice should be from that, and like with the prop system, if we find something about it that just doesn't work the way we want it to, then we'll iterate on that and improve it. And as we're doing now, it's they need fixing anyway, so it's a good opportunity to improve how they work. Not yet an ASCII, no. Yeah, okay, so I did have it generating IDs and seeds automatically, but obviously it would do that every time the level loads, which was no good. So in order for level designers, i.e. Claire, to not forget to do it, it now generates error messages if it's missing a particular component. And all we do there is we just click generate ID and the error goes away. So like for all of these, we just generate an ID and then the problem is solved. And all it's doing internally is it's just checking to see whether this field is blank or not, and similarly whether the seed is 0. So if the seed is 0, i.e. like that, it will also say missing seed. So we generate a random seed and then we generate an ID. and the unique ID basically takes the XYZ coordinates of the object and turns that into a hash. So we're just getting the actor location, generating a hash, and that's our unique ID. Nice and simple. But what we need to do is we need to build the system which actually does the movement of the object when you load a previously saved game. I love that idea, Pro Puke, yeah. No, Rocky, there shouldn't be an upper limit. I mean, the seed system is there for, like, if we have this apple here a minute, if I click random scale, which it already is, it should be randomly scaling based on its seed, which of course it's not going to change because the seed is not changing. So every time I click generate seed, you can see that the apple is changing size and shape. Now obviously there is an upper limit to how many seeds there are, but that is 8 billion, and that means we can have 8 billion different sized apples, which feels like enough. And the ID is irrelevant anyway, so again, because the ID is a hash based on the location of the object, it's unlikely you're going to get two colliding hashes. Yeah, there are different apple skins. I think I can't remember whether or not oh yeah, there. Did I call them red apples? I can't remember now. Oh yeah, I did. Yeah, so the red apples and green apples are technically separate objects. But the way the prop system works in that regard, I guess, again, with, like, you can see it with the potatoes. So, like, those potatoes are all the same actor, but because they've got that random seed, that means you can have, you know, any size or shape. And what we'll also do at some point is we'll randomize the texture as well. So it means we can have an infinite number, a practically infinite number of potatoes using a single actor. And then we'll apply that for essentially anything in the game. So, you know, alien plants, alien stuff, anything really. We can create random variations. For these particular ones, it's literally just, you know, changing the scale of the object, which is rather simplistic. But we can also use procedural mesh attributes as well, and really change them up, especially if we're using nanite tessellation as well. So, you know, we can have lumps and bumps that are procedurally generated as well. Yeah, so things like how much liquid there is in a bottle. Obviously, by default, they've all got the same amounts. But with each object having that unique ID, as so having the unique ID means we can save states against that unique ID. So, like, the amount of liquid in the bottle will be saved against its unique ID. So when you're loading a fresh game, that bottle will have the correct amount of liquid in it, as per your previous save. Yeah, I agree, Propu. Great idea. And so one thing I need to do actually is I need to move all of these off of this default prop level and stick them on BDEC proper. Because in the previous system, which is in the current demo, the game actually spawns these objects dynamically, so they don't exist as part of the world or part of the level. And from like a world designer perspective, that's an absolute nightmare, because it means you can't easily decorate an area with props, because as soon as you've saved those to the level file, they vanish. So normally speaking, that level file won't be loaded, and indeed isn't loaded as part of the game load, which just turns it into a bit of a nightmare for level designers. So all of these objects now need moving to the actual proper BDEC interior, which is that one. So we just need to not select everything. So Control M on those to shift their level, and the same with all of these. Control M. Right, so they're now on the correct level, and now that they're on the correct level, we will generate the IDs. I just use these for testing for now. Right, so if we turn off that, so all those are gone, all the things on the tables are gone, and we're just left with those. Yeah, those are all gone as well. So the goal here is to have these objects loaded as part of the actual level itself, and yet still manage the fact that they can be moved around and saved in their new locations, without having the level reload them and then duplicate them in their original positions. Yes, Delta, no plant on the pool table, although oddly enough it doesn't. If I load all the overlay levels, there is no plant, so I don't know where the plant's coming from. But yes, the plant on the pool table is another reason why I'm doing this, because there was no way of removing the plant from the pool table because it was all loaded from a data table. So that plant was being spawned dynamically based on the contents of that data table. And again, as a level designer, you have no visibility of what's being spawned from that data table because it's an external resource. So yeah, that just made decorating the world really, really difficult. So this completely fixes that entirely. Yes, I fully intend for this to be working and to be able to play pool in the game at some point. This will end up being a side project when I'm bored. Obviously right now, if I were to touch this and attempt to do anything with it, then Claire would give me a massive slap, so I'm steering well clear. Okay. Right, so we've got our hash, we've got our ID. So on begin play, this is where we need to check our save file and check to see whether or not this particular object is already known about. So we need our unique ID. Let's grab our game state as well. Game state, where are you? There you are. Yes, Delta. So when it comes to dynamically created objects, so obviously we'll have 3D printers, and the idea with that is that if you want to print out a picture frame with a picture in it, then you can then stick that to a wall anywhere you want on the ship. But then obviously we need to reflect the fact that that is stuck there for the duration of that save game. So in that instance, which is kind of what this is for, the 3D printer will create the object on its little print bed, and once that object is spawned in the world, it will give it a seed and it will give it a unique ID. So those two things are set at print time. Now every time you pick up and move the prop, which is here, so when the object is set down and it goes to sleep, so physics go to sleep, what we do is we check to see, does it have a unique ID? Is that not false? And if unique ID is not empty, then we go ahead and we save the location of that prop. Which means that when you pick that item up out of the printer and go move it somewhere, then it will update the save file as to where that object is. Now from that point on, obviously that object that you've created dynamically doesn't exist on any of the level files, so that doesn't get loaded as part of the level. We have to spawn that in separately based on that save file. So what will happen with the game state, which is what happens here, we go through the prop locations and then we spawn those props. Now what's happening here is it's loading the default prop locations, which is what we don't want to do. So we want the default props to be part of the level file, not dynamically spawned. So we only want to be spawning the dynamic props, because all the rest of them should already exist as part of the level. And that will also apply for things you bring off the surface of alien worlds as well. So if you send down a probe and get a physical object in the probe back, then the same process applies as to whether or not you've just 3D printed it. So when you open the probe and you find that object, at that point it's got an ID, it's got a hash, and you can then move that object around, and the game knows that there should be that object class with that seed and that ID in that location from then on. So whether you retrieve it from a probe, or you 3D print it, or you bring it up physically from a planetary surface, it will work the same way in all of those different scenarios. Yeah, with the paintings and custom images, maybe. So by default, we'll probably just generate a whole bunch of just abstract AI art and just have a wide range of things you can pick from. But if we have a folder that you can put JPEGs into, or probably more likely PNGs, there's no reason why we couldn't put an ID against that and load them accordingly. The issue with that is it wouldn't work in multiplayer. So for that to be multiplayer compatible, all players would have to have a copy of that same PNG, which is where it gets awkward. And we don't want to be able to have players just arbitrarily upload PNGs, because that's going to be just a world of abuse. You can imagine the sorts of things people are going to put in pictures all over the ship. Yeah, so I think if we ever allow custom paintings, It's going to have to be in the sense that players will have to pre-share those files with one another. But yeah, we'll think about that further down the line. Scash, yes. So there is a delete function in here as well. Somewhere, can't remember where I put it now. But yes, so we will purge items from the save file as and when they get destroyed. So we need to implement some kind of like bin on the ship, or some kind of recycling container. So if you don't want a prop anymore, you can just dump it in the recycling container, and it will strip it from the save file, so that object won't get spawned again. Similarly, if the object falls off the ship for some reason, which tends to happen quite a lot at the moment, so if something falls through the floor and into space, right now it kind of just falls forever. So we need to make sure that those objects, if they get a certain distance from the ship, they get culled and removed from the save data. Yeah, no worries. Yeah, to be honest, the one of the biggest challenges we have with the save file is when we go ahead and make a fairly significant change like this one, where we're changing the way the data is accessed and loaded. You have people that already have that save file from previous games, and we're now changing how that save file works. So it's that, how do you back fix the existing save file to work with the new paradigm? That's kind of like an onward problem. Yeah, that's an interesting one, CSI, and I've been wondering about that myself. The only way I can think of managing that is, obviously the planetary surface is going to have its own XYZ coordinates, and we can quite easily give each planet its own ID. Obviously we only have, well, I say we only have 8 billion IDs. That's not true. I mean, if we use a string, then we have an infinite number of IDs. Because if each planetary surface takes the galactic XYZ of its system, plus just an arbitrary number for what planet number it is within that system, then that string is going to be unique in the galaxy. So that gives us a unique string for that particular planetary surface. If we then have a save file where we apply the same save data for the prop against the ID of the planetary surface, then yes, technically, if you take an object to that planetary surface and leave it there, then when we reload that same surface with that same ID in the future, then that prop can be spawned again in that location. It's actually not difficult to achieve. The question is one of as Skash was referring to, is save bloat. So if you're leaving stuff on planets all over the place, then you're going to get those references in the save data, and if you never go back to that planet ever again, that object's kind of just sat there forever, just taking up space in the save file. I mean, it could be like just a few kilobytes worth of data. It's not a huge amount, but if you find yourself doing that a lot over a long period of time, then we could do with some way of purging that in the long run. But yeah, so definitely possible, but does come with some risks. Yeah, exactly, like an email trash folder. It just, yeah, it's not a bad shout, to be honest. There's definitely ways and means, but you know, from a from an immersion perspective, if you leave something on a planet and then return to that planet, say 6 weeks later, it would be nice if that object was still there. Yes, I think some kind of decomposition timer would work. We'll have a look at just how bloated the save files get, and maybe add that as a feature if it's needed, because I do like the idea that, you know, we can just leave things on planets and come back to them later. I think the more difficult challenge with that is that if you leave an object on a planetary surface, then obviously that's a physics object which goes to sleep once it stops moving. Now, if you then unload that planetary surface, that object has no way of knowing that it also needs to be deleted at the same time. So what you'll end up with is the object will still be there in that same world space, in the world reference frame. If you then go to a different planet, then that different planet's surface will be loaded in the same physical space that the last planet was loaded. So that prop will then be there on the new planet that you're just visiting. Because as far as the prop's concerned, it's just gone idle and it's just happily sat there, you know, waiting to go active again. So yeah, there's some additional layers of complexity there that just need to capture some edge cases. Just double checking a minute where this save's being stored. So we're storing that on game state. Okay, so I'm storing those as a separate variable, which, to be honest, would be better off if I rolled it into the actual save struct, but that can be a job for another day. Right, let's go and have a look at that file in a minute. Save system there. Right, so we've got okay, so right, so we've got nothing in the array by default, which means we're spawning those directly from the data table, which is where? There. Yeah, so this data table has all of the default props on the ship. And this is, this is the thing we need to delete, because this is madness. It can't work. This is no way workable as a long-term solution. So we need shot of this data table, which means what we need to do is so we don't actually need to spawn those at all. In fact, we don't need a separate struct for default and seasonal objects. Yeah, save bloat is going to be not so much of an issue because the data load is quite small, but it's going to be a minor issue. Like take Minecraft for example. So if you start exploring away from the world origin in Minecraft, for every chunk that you start generating, that's another chunk that's in the save file. So the actual level data in Minecraft can get massive the more you explore. And we're going to have a similar issue in that every star system you scan obviously needs to record the fact that you've scanned it. So we need to record the location of the system, we need to record exploration data against each planet within that system. So, if we're talking an average of 30 odd planets per system, then each star system you scan is generating 30 loads of data, and over years worth of exploring on a single save game, you could have potentially tens of thousands of rows of data where you've been conducting surveys and exploration data. And it is what it is, really. I mean, that is the nature of the game. There are a lot of star systems, there's a lot of stuff to scan, and that data needs storing somewhere. I think switching it out to an SQL database at some point might be the way forward, but for now just a struct will certainly do. That they're quite robust. That's true, Anassi, yeah, plus moons as well. So on a per system basis, we're already storing a lot of data, and the more exploring you do, the bigger the save file's going to get, and that's just a natural consequence of the type of thing we're doing with this. Yeah, I remember some of my Minecraft saves are massive because I do like to get out there and explore, so of course I'm always generating new chunks. Right, so what are we grabbing from here? So we're saving to that. Let's just check, because I think we're triggering some interface stuff with this. So that's not implemented. That's not implemented. Neither is that. So that one is. So we're not using that. Okay, so the only one we're actually using is this. And what are we writing to? Doesn't Jupiter have like 100 moons or something? Yeah, so apparently Jupiter has 80 to 95 moons, which is mad. I doubt we'll include all of those, because I think some of them are literally, you know, like a kilometer wide. But yeah, a lot of them. The save file won't impact loading too much. I mean, if it's, you know, if it grows to like gigabytes in size, then yes, that will need loading into memory. But I doubt very much that it's going to grow that big. I mean, you would have to probably do hundreds of thousands of planets worth of scanning, if not more. I mean, to put it into perspective, in fact, we can work it out exactly. Where are we? So this particular database has 18.2 million rows of real-world stars, and it's 2.6 gig. Now we can load this into the game in around about 30 milliseconds. It's rapid when it loads it the first time. It just holds it in memory. So I guess that's an indicator of what it's like in terms of file size. So if 18.2 million is 2.5 gig, then I guess 9 million's going to be like 1 and a bit gig. So how many star systems are you practically going to be able to scan in a given save file? So I'd say you're talking millions before it goes up into the gigabytes territory. Yeah, the issue with that is that the exploration data is part of the overall master save file. So when we save the game, we are saving that to a struct within the overall save struct. So it is all loaded and saved together. But it kind of needs to be, because this is accessed at multiple times all over the place. Yeah, it's swings and roundabouts really, because you could have a save file per system. So every XYZ coordinate in the galaxy will generate a new save file, but then you're talking about folder bloat. So potentially you've then got millions of small files within the save folder. If you're talking one file per system, then that's a lot of files. It's actually more efficient to store it all in a database, which is what a struct is basically. It's just a database. I hate casting to things, but I'm going to in this instance because I haven't set up a blueprint interface for this particular thing yet. So yeah, this is potentially going to be a costly thing to do. Because in an ideal world, you'd want to do something like contains item and search the array for instances of this. But with a contains search, it needs to match every single struct variable exactly. So you can't just search for the ID. It also has to have a matching class, transform, and seed. Which I suppose actually we can do in this instance, can't we? Because we do know that data. Yes, we do know that data. So... hopefully that will get our current class. I need to change that to a string. What we can't do, because it's the transform that we're looking for, so that's the bit we don't know. So no, we can't do that. That would have been nice, but no, we can't. So instead, we need to do for each with break. So does that equal that? If it does, then we wish to update the transform. So we want to set world location. Set world transform even. So to set our world transform to that, and then break the loop. We'll have a crack at it, CSI, see how far we get. This needs to work for the demo update, so it's one of the things on the to-do list. So on begin play, we grab our saved prop locations. We check to see whether our particular unique ID is in the list. If it is, then we update our transform to that location. Otherwise, we do nothing and stay where we are. So that should solve that. And then when we move an object, we update the prop save as we already are. To be honest, that might have already done it, so let's give that a whirl a minute. Wrong node. These particular props, by the way, are they are not loaded on the client, so they're server only, which means they should replicate their location quite happily. They do an ASCII, yes. Yes, Ian, the exploration data could definitely be a separate save file. No reason why not, to be honest. So things like props could be a separate file. Save data could be a separate file. Oh yeah, I fixed Jonesy as well. Oh, that's nice and chaotic. So you can see what's happened here is it has loaded in duplicate items for all of those props for the simple reason that they're in that data table. So to fix that, we just need to purge that data table. So where's our load game? Right, load game. So yeah, so don't do it there. Yeah, so we want to update the variable but do nothing with it, essentially. So what's this? So that's where we're continuing the saved game. So yeah, we just want to do that. For a brand new game, there wouldn't be anything to spawn anyway, so that's fine. Yeah, that's better. Now the question is, did I leave it running long enough for these to save? That is true in ASCII. You could literally send your save file to someone else, and then they'd have the same data as you. Wouldn't be able to merge them though, so you'd be literally just giving them your data. It's better. So if we pick up this bottle and we put the bottle on this table, we'll give it a minute for the system to start saving. I believe it waits a minute. I think that's what I set it to before it starts saving. Basically, it gives you a grace period in case you load the wrong save and don't want anything to save. Where are you off to, Jonesy? Apparently he wants to be inside the chair. Right, so that should have saved now. So if we quit and go back to it, we'll see whether it did or not. Yeah, so remembering where NPCs are and indeed players is definitely something on the to-do list. So if you log out on the bridge, then it would be nice if you logged in, in the same place that you logged out. Right, so that's back there. Then the question is it back there because it didn't save? There's an easier way of testing that, I suppose. If we change the walls to pink, although that is a separate save file, so customization is saved separately. It's probably easier to test this actually if we do a quick package with it. So let's clear that off in a minute. Yes, Anasi, we will have I suppose an infinite number of saves. So it would just be a case of if you want to create a separate save file, you can do. You might have different ships that you want different playstyles for. So you might want to have a game where you're just being passive and friendly the whole time, and you want a different save game where you're just being like a galactic asshole going around attacking everyone. So if you want two different playstyles, you can have two different save games, and however many save games you want. We also want to implement like staged saves as well. So if you're about to go into a location where you think it's going to be really dodgy, it would be nice to be able to save the game before you do. So in addition to the auto save, you'll be able to have manual save points as well. I actually got this down to 0 errors and 0 warnings at one point. Now look at all those horrible warnings. What are you moaning about? That's an engine error. Interesting. Hang on, let's reload the engine a minute. Sure, Fredishay, yeah. Why is that stopped on 93%? Let's try that again. I think Unreal done broke itself. Time for a cup of tea. If what else fails, a cup of tea. Ouch. That's it, yeah. Scrap the project, start again. I could just abandon it and go straight to 5.5 if need be. Right, let's try that again. What's going on here? See, these are actual engine files, which it's not liking here. You know, this might end up being a reboot situation. Now, let's just make sure there's nothing running that we need to get rid of. Let's kill that as well. Okay, weird. Let's fire up the 5.5 version a minute, make sure that actually does work. Yeah, there might be no choice but to move to 5.5 now. My hand has been forced. There go all the props. See, the thing I've been making fixes all that. Yeah, so as you can see, it's running perfectly fine on 5.5, except for the fact that that should have a ring around it. Actually, on that note, Because unless I'm mistaken, I remember seeing like the shadow of a ring as I entered the atmosphere, like there's kind of a glitchy ring in the distance. I swear I wasn't dreaming it. There was definitely a ring. Perhaps I was dreaming it. Alright, let's try another one. Because if the rings are actually okay, then to be honest, there's nothing about this build which prevents it going live on 5.5. Yeah, this is my super secret test ship. No rings there. Right, next. Yeah, exactly. Every deck is an extra DLC. Ah, see, look, there's the ring. Knew there was one there somewhere hiding. So the question is, what about that ring is different in 5.5 compared to 5.4? Let's see if we can have a look. Content browser. What's my wallpaper? The wallpaper is that. That was the first booster catch with Starhopper looking on proudly. Yeah, some weird transparency shenanigans going on. Stick that in the emissive a minute so we can see it. Okay, why are we not rendering anything? Okay, so we've got that. Okay. Okay, so they're all as they should be. Right, okay, and then the opacity is what's messing us up, so that one's fine. So something along here. So this is what defines the shadow on the ring from the planets. So let's just bypass that a minute and give it a save, see whether that fixes the issue. Not particularly. Try it masked rather than transparent. Interesting. Which means it must be so faint as to be invisible. Right, okay, so if we just make it fully opaque. Alright, okay, so giant ring texture. Yeah, so nothing's changed on my side with the rings shader. It's something which has changed on Unreal side with 5.5. So there's obviously something in the shader it's not happy with. So that's the pattern it's generating. So normally we drive the opacity with that pattern to give us our ring texture. So something about that is not happy with 5.5. The question is which aspect of it is not happy. So let's stick that back to translucent. Yeah, I could just leave it like that. Right, so if I just pop that in there a minute directly. Yeah, there would be a gap normally, but obviously you're not seeing that because we're not doing the usual calculations with the transparency to give it the gap. Yeah, so that's what it should look like, and obviously it isn't because of whatever issue we've got. It's going to override that a minute. Nope, still no ring. It's interesting. I thought that might be an opacity issue, but obviously not. If we just mask off the red channel with that a minute. Oops, no, I didn't want to do that. That gives us that. So let's see whether or not it will take that as an opacity input. Yeah, something like that. Very odd. Okay, so what if we give it an opacity of 0.5? I do wonder whether this is something to do. Yeah, see, we're literally just driving that with a flat value, so that is odd. And yet an opacity of 1 was working. See, now we have a black unlit ring. So there should be nothing about the shader itself which is in any way different. Although I will give it some emissive because it seems to be nicely black. Right, so that's basically self-lit. Now if we give it that value there again, can we still see it? Yes, we can. Okay, so that's a start. So in that case, what if we plug in the whole thing? Okay, so that works. I wonder whether it's the subsurface scattering that's breaking it. No. Okay. Actually, we need that so it has reflections. It does, yeah. It has subsurface scattering, so it does have the light shining through the ring. Normally, anyway, when it works. Let's just put ourselves at an acute angle to the sun so that we can see that. Ordinarily, from this position, you would see the starlight reflecting off of the ring. Which, if we plug that in, we should see. That's interesting. It doesn't seem to want to display unless we give it some emissive. I wonder if it's not picking up the lighting channel. See, with it being self-illuminated now, you've lost the normal map, so you can't see the the close-up detail. Okay, but we know there's a ring there, so. No, I don't think it's anything like that. I think it's more a lighting channel or something along those lines, because yeah, I'm just wondering if if I make that solid a minute, give it an opacity of 1 without an emissive color, if it blots out the stars, then we know it's a lighting issue, which it is. So it's not receiving any light. Right, do we have any weirdness going on with the lighting channel? No, so it's correctly on channel 0. Odd. So if we skip applying the material, then it should just be a normal default material square, which should be lit by the star. Which it doesn't appear to be. Because that should just be using just a default rogue material. Which you can't see because we're side on. Hang on. Tiny inside there. Okay. But yeah, so it should have been just using the world grid material. So why is it not lighting? Yeah, it definitely makes it moody. Need to connect up that bit again. Oh, that's weird. Why are we not firing the seed at it? This isn't the issue, but without the seed, it means that all the rings would have been the same, which is no good. So if we leave that as that and we make it emissive again, let's see what we end up with. Okay. Right, and if we hook that back in. Okay. Right, so if I'm going to make a new material here, which is just going to be a really basic nothing material. Basic light material. And all we're going to do is we're just going to stick a 1 in there just to make it white. And that's it. Nothing more than that. Okay, and then if we apply that material to the ring, so rather than that, get our ring, set material, and we'll give it our white material. Oh, that's interesting. It's setting the material from somewhere else. Okay, where else is it being set from? Okay, so we're setting the scale there, visibility there, material there. Okay. Right, and then the optimization system loads and unloads materials as needed, so that we're not filling RAM with those materials. So in actual fact, it's not even needed. And then over here, we will grab our seed. Set that at this point here. Whack that in there. Right, and then during the optimization, we'll pop that in there. Except in this particular instance, we want to do that. Just to force it to have that white material. Yeah, it's just a flat material, flat texture. Okay, so we're looking at the underside of that, I believe. If we make this double-sided, that will solve that. So okay, so we are lighting that up, so that's something. It is quite an acute angle, definitely. That shouldn't make a difference. But yeah, so it is definitely lighting it. So there are no lighting channel issues or anything like that. So we can rule that out. So we can go ahead and generate our material as needed. So all we're doing is creating our random stream, getting our ring material, setting that on the mesh, setting the various ring details. Yeah, that should all be correct. Okay, getting somewhere. So that's the actual ring that it should have rendered, which is the seeded design rather than the default design. So it has a very tiny close-up ring. So if we get rid of that, the ring is gone. Although I suspect it is still there, it's just very, very dark. Oh, that's interesting. It wasn't happy with just plain white either. Hey, Oni Noni. We are fixing bugs today. Right, there we go. So there's our plain white ring. So we know the opacity's working. Yeah, it is literally just the fact that it's not picking up the light. Which leads me to believe it might very well be a subsurface scattering problem. Because we're viewing it from the back side at the moment. Which probably doesn't help because of the angle it's at. Let's go fly through it a minute. Right, so they should give us just a solid white ring. See, that's interesting as well. So it's having some issues handling the transparency between the atmosphere and the ring. Interesting. So we do a roughness of 0 and a metallic of 0. Sorry, roughness of 1, not 0. Want to be fully rough, white, fully opaque. Yeah, let's give that a try a minute. See, under those conditions, that should be lit. That is weird. If we were to make that an opaque mesh. Still unlit. It's definitely something that's changed in 5.5. So there's nothing like untoward in that lot at all. Let's just check the other side of it. Just see what. Oh, hang on, we're getting some lighting by the looks of things. Question is that subsurface lighting or is it direct lighting? Huh. Interesting. That normal map made a huge difference then. You can see a flickery ring. Come on, shaders. Right, so if we get rid of that, do we have a lit ring? we don't. Okay. Okay, so if we go back to that. Right, so we get rings there. What about there? Right, so nothing there. That would be cool, Delta. As a Babylon 5 fan, I support that wholeheartedly. Right, I see what's happening here. So, yeah, so because we're sticking a value of 0.8 as our max opacity, it's probably, because it's less than 1, it's just not masking at all, so that's no good. Alright, so just to rule that out, so masked, it displays the ring. Right. Okay. Just make sure the subsurface still works. Yeah, so that still works. Okay. So I think the issue is the illumination of a translucent object. That seems to be what's changed specifically. I mean, is it... Is it because we were using surface forward shading, perhaps? Okay, so that's showing it there but unlit. Kind of, yeah. There is enough of an angle to light it, because if we go for just an opaque material, then we do get the lighting from the star. So you know, we do have enough of an angle to do that. The issue seems to be specifically with the transparency, because if we went to masked with a mask of an opacity of 1, then we're still lit with that opacity of 1. If we go to translucent with an opacity of 1, then we go dark, we lose our lighting. So the the star is not lighting the translucency. Which could have other issues for other things. So really the question is why is it not lighting translucent? Let's try that a minute. Rather than the forward shading, use a translucency volume. No. So this is obviously something which has changed in 5.5, because this never used to be an issue. Yeah, because we needed the forward shading, so we had access to the metallic and the roughness to be able to do reflections on the ring surface. See whether it's actually reflecting the sunlight or not. If we set the roughness to 0, then it should reflect the stars and the sun. Which it is not, interestingly. Okay. Okay, and then masked, it should. I wasn't specifically trying to go to 5.5. It's just that we were having some issues with 5.4. The engine seems to have become corrupt, and probably going to have to reinstall it. So I figured whilst we're looking at stuff, if we can get the rings working in 5.5, then we don't actually need 5.4 anymore. See, to be honest, the reflections are behaving weirdly as well. Because that's not normal. There is something very, very weird going on with 5.5. Right, so a simple opaque material. Is this because the normal's like zeros? No. Hang on, let's right, so tangent should be 1, 0, 0, not. Oh, it is. Could well be, yeah. Yeah, that material's just not behaving the way you would expect it to. I mean, literally the only thing we've plugged into it is just like 1 for the base color, and yet it is behaving very strangely. Right. Right, so that's the back face, because we can't see it. Should pop into view in a sec. Or not, it's completely vanished. There it is. So far, Don, yes. I don't think anything else, at least as far as I've seen, is broken. It's just the rings. Right, so that is the upper face of that texture. So we know where the right side is. So make it two-sided, still fine. It is very weird, to be sure. So the sun should be able to shine through it. Okay, so which it is. So, right, so the light is shining through it from the other side to light it up. So I think one of the issues we're having here is that the sun is facing the back face of the mesh. So the lighting that we are getting is subsurface lighting only. So is the issue therefore that subsurface lighting no longer works with transparent materials? I mean, is that what we're stuck with? So if I make that translucent with an opacity of 1, do we lose all of the subsurface lighting? Yes, we do. So I think that's what the issue is. I think the subsurface is broken with translucent materials. I mean, if I just stick that as 1, it's as strong as it could possibly be. Yeah, so basically that means unless I can find a workaround for that, we're stuck. And that's the default transparency mode. Where we get nothing. And obviously, if you give it an emissive input, then it just lights up as expected, which is no good because we can't have the rings self-lit. No, it shouldn't do. Ray tracing, ray tracing is not disabled now because it's needed for megalights, but shouldn't make an issue with this. I don't think they're set to cast shadow anyway, although that is actually worth investigating. Oh yeah, they are set to cast shadow, which is pointless because the planet's too far away to receive it anyway. Yeah, so they're not occluding. It would be interesting actually if the issue was the fact they were self-shadowing, although it does not appear to be the case. Yeah, I'd love it if that was the issue, but sadly not. Yeah, you can make it two-sided, which obviously causes weirdness. But you shouldn't need that for the subsurface. Yeah, so in 5.4, the way we've got the planetary rings set up is that they're a transparent material. And obviously we need it to be transparent rather than masked, because a masked material is either on or off, so you get really harsh edges to the rings. With a translucency material, you can do like feathered, nicely faded edges, which just makes them look a lot nicer. They kind of fade out nicely, and it also means you can have really faint rings as well. But obviously they need to be lit by the star, so we used surface forward shading to do that, but it seems in 5.5 that no longer works, or at least it works differently, maybe in a way that I don't know about. But I mean, this is like the simplest of materials now. We're giving it a base color of 1, which is white, an opacity of 1, which is completely solid, and yet it will not light from the star if it's set to translucent, which is really weird. Why do I set it as foliage, just out of interest? Nah, same issue. Yeah, we can do projected ring shadows, the same way we do the planet shadow on the ring, we can do that the opposite way round. The reason I haven't enabled that yet is because the shadow of the rings on the planet is different from the rings themselves. So I need to make sure that the noise function that we use to generate the ring shadow on the planet is the same noise function that generates the rings themselves, so that the two match with matching opacities as well. Because what you don't want is like a really faint ring that's creating a really dark shadow. So once that's been solved, then I'll turn that on. Okay, well, to be perfectly honest, I don't think there's a way forward with this. Because we can't have opaque rings. And if we go for masked rings, yeah, that's the shadow there. I think the issue here is that we are generating a value which is less than 1. Yeah, it's kind of a grey, so that's not going to work with a masked approach. I can always multiply it a little bit so we get that white value. Hang on, let's try that a minute. See it anyway. Yeah, so the opacity mask is too dim. Let's really brighten that up. Yeah, there we go. So you can see you get this really solid hard edge if you're using a masked approach. Although now that we have that, let's see whether or not it actually lights it up properly. Eventually, Scotty, yes, they will. Okay, so you see that ring is now being lit properly by the star. So we're not applying any emissive to it. The star is properly lighting that up. So if we were to put in that, and that, and that, move them out the way. See, so it's drawing the ring and it's lighting the ring exactly as it should do, which is nice. And if we multiply that by something crazy, and then we saturate that so it's limited from 0 to 1. That should give us the full extent of the ring. Which is that. So that's basically your full ring. Obviously, hard edges looks awful because it's masked rather than translucent. But that does prove that it's the translucency that's the problem. as opposed to anything else. Oh yeah, we do support normal on there. Let's just see whether that works. A bit too far away to see, but it's not breaking it, so that's the main thing. Make sure it still works with subsurface. Yeah, it still works. Right, if we use the same opacity mask there, and then the only thing we're going to change is make it translucent rather than masked, then it should become unlit. Yeah, so, alright, that's definitely the issue then. Translucency will not light in 5.5, so I need to work out why. Oh, I doubt it, Doubter. Be nice if they did, that they could suddenly pop up with a solution. I'll go on the Unreal Slackers Discord and see whether or not I can come up with an answer there, because yeah, I mean, it's probably a fairly big issue that's probably affecting lots of people in ways they probably don't even realise. But yeah, something significant has changed with that since 5.4. Yeah, just going to have to research that and see if I can come up with an answer. So... so we can't move to 5.5 until that's fixed, basically, which is a shame, because it would be nice. Did that crash on 5.5 or 5.4? Is that an old one or a new one? Right, let's just try that one last time. So that's not going to load either. Yeah, I couldn't work out whether it was an old one or not. Right, so I reckon that that's going to probably need a reinstall. So, Sigh. Actually, one last ditch effort. Something I can do is just rebuild the Visual Studio files. That might fix it, you never know. Weird. Why is it missing DLLs? That's weird. Yeah, that's just that's the Mantis plugin, but more concerning is the fact it's missing a DLL, which it shouldn't.
working. I just have to move to mine.
Oh, that's true. Yeah. Fun. Yeah, okay, so I'll try with a reboot first, because you never know, that might just magically fix it. But yeah, it sounds like I've got a reinstall ahead of me, which would be nice. So with that, there's not much else I can do this evening, actually, other than fix that, so I shall call it there, I think. Where are we? Let's go for Big Me. Big Me. So yeah, so sorry about that. I was hoping we'd get more done tonight, but the Unreal Engine gods are against us, it would seem. We've got weirdness with 5.5 and then 5.4 exploding on me. So fun. These things happen. Welcome to game dev. Yeah, Claire's is fine. I should just move to her laptop instead. All good. I shall get it fixed, and yes, we shall be back in business very quickly. Right, have a good week ahead, everyone, and hopefully I shall see you on Wednesday with a fully working, not crashing setup.
Bye, everyone.
All right, see you on Wednesday. Bye for now.